Coordinating Council to order. Mr. Tom Day, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minority Leader Miller. Minority Leader Sykes. Minority Leader Alley. I know he's online. Majority Leader Croft. I know he's online too. Vice President Wilborn.
There's only 4 of us here. We don't have enough.
He's still trying to get on.
No.
Speaker Pro Tempore Carpenter.
Here.
There's 5.
President Masterson. Speaker Hawkins.
Here.
Everyone is on. Senator Wilborn is still trying to get on, but.
And we have a quorum. The first order of business today is adoption of minutes. Are there any questions on the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by President Masterson. Do we have a second? Second by Minority Leader Sykes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it. Motion is adopted. Second item of business is consideration and authorization for the printing of permanent House journals and Senate journals. To discuss this item, Chair recognizes Susan Kennard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you've been on LCC before, you've seen this item before, a whisk by. This is the annual approval by the Legislative Coordinating Council to approve the printing of the House and Senate permanent journals, as has been for the last probably dozen years or more. We have waived the statutory requirement that all members receive a copy of the permanent journals. That was in this year's proviso language in this year's budget bill as well. The Senate Secretary and I have talked and have recommended to keep the printing and cost at the same as it has been for a number of years, 150 sets at $80. So we are requesting approval by the LCC of our recommendation.
Any questions for Susan? Motion made by Senate President Masterson, second by Minority Leader Sykes. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Aye.
I assume those rise. The ayes have it. Motion passes. Third item of business is consideration and approval of interim special committee on the budget process and development. To discuss this item, Chair recognizes Ms. Shirley Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a letter from the Speaker asking for a special committee for 2 days to review the budget process and development.
Are there any questions? Minority Leader Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is, why are we moving? What is the intent? This is different than what we've done in past years. So if I could get maybe a little more clarification.
Yes, so that would come from me. So I've been thinking for a long time about our budget process, and certainly the fact that I think most of us would agree that we have way too many provisos coming in at the end during conference committee, and it happens every time. I don't know for sure how many we had this last time, but it seemed like 30 or 40. May not have been that many, but it sure did seem like a lot. Most of those items never get a chance to be vetted by the budget committees, and so that certainly was the issue that kind of started down this road. And then I got to thinking about other opportunities that we may have. One of the items certainly is the fact that we really don't get to start working on budgets until 3 weeks or so after we come to session, and that's because we don't know what's in the budget. And so I thought it would be good for us to look at the budgeting process and see if there's a way we could speed that up, make it to where our people have a whole lot longer to work on the budget than what they do. Many times, by the time they get their budget, in our side, the budget committees get their budget books, they may have very little time to look through those before they have to start reporting out to the Appropriations Committee. And I would imagine that probably is the same process on the Senate side, although I'm not over there, so I can't tell you that. But I think probably the same things happen there. And I thought it would be good for, both the Appropriations and the Senate Ways and Means Committee to come together and look at that process and see what kind of things that we can improve, how we can improve the efficiency of it, and really just to brainstorm on our whole process and see if maybe there's some opportunity for us to develop a better process. So it's a 2-day committee that I and Senator Masterson have requested, and I certainly let the Senate President weigh in on this too, because he's a part of this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would just add a little bit, and this is really just a look at it, because the process, in government in particular, especially high turnover government like legislatures, you start losing track of what is really the design of the process versus what kind of becomes tradition and moving forward. And it's just kind of been more of a tradition in more recent years that you just kind of accept the governor's budget and wait for her to introduce a bill. When the fact is we can introduce our own budget bill, and really you still have both options open to you, because the governor's budget in effect can just be a large GBA. Right, the recommended budget by the governor. And you could take that in its entirety, or you could split it up. But then we're not on pins and needles waiting for what's this going to look like at the end of the first week of our session. We really could start working through things prior to that. I want to look at just kind of how we normally do. The Senate is really not set up for processing the entire creation of the bill, right? Our subcommittees are 2 or 3 people, have to meet over lunches, right? I'd like to see, I think, and this is what we want to look at, a more traditional bill process, because the House has standing subcommittees, and you could basically, they take up the budget the first half of session, then we get it and we receive it and we make our adjustments, just like a bill, instead of 2 completely separate ideas that collide at the end of the session and these massively long reconciliation. We would have, they would start, we would finish, and that would also help us confine our session into the 90 days. I think it would just be a more efficient process. So, and this again is just a committee to look at those, so I'm very much in support of it.
Speaker Pro Tem Carpenter is online, and I believe he has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to echo some of what you guys have already said, but in my conversations with members of the House, I along with many in our caucus are, I think, very excited for the possibility of updating this budgeting process and just looking at ideas on what we can do to become more efficient and effective, especially with the people's money. And I think that there is some value to be had here, because when was the last time we actually sat down and evaluated our budgeting process and how it is that we come to spend the people's money? And so I think it's definitely worth looking into and at least having the conversation, so that hopefully we can, maybe end up with a better product at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very good. Senate Minority Leader, Senate Minority Leader Sykes.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. What other states have a legislative group who would kind of look at a budget if they were to develop a budget? And my other question, and I know this is just kind of gathering information, but looking forward, if we went this way, the budget staff, the DOB team, I think that's 8 or 9 people who full-time. So just wondering, capacity, if we're looking, how does this affect? And I know that's further down the road, but trying to evaluate.
And so we have met with Shirley, and there are some other states that do that. I'm not sure how many. Shirley, do you have that?
Mr. Speaker, I do.
Apologize, I don't have that with me.
Speaker Pro Tem?
There's about 8 other states in America that have legislative-led processes, and it ranges the gambit from those that are, a little bit more left to those that are a little bit more right. So the one that's coming to the top of my mind right now is Oregon, I believe, has a legislative-led process, but as I recall, it's about 8 or 9 states.
Senate President Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would even add that, I mean, it was consideration of the staffing that was part of the thought process too, of the sequencing it in the way of a normal bill, because right now they're having to try to manage the construction of the budget in two different places at the same time. And if I could construct it here and then review it here, it actually would be more efficient for the staff.
And some of your questions will be borne out during the interim. We have a lot of questions too. We've, Senate Master and I have actually talked with Shirley in the research about some of the possibilities here. And I think a lot of our questions will be answered during that interim, which is the reason why we want that interim, is so we can actually do a really good study and figure that out. Yep. Any further questions or discussion? If not, I'd look. Motion by Senate President Masterson, second.
Second.
Second by Speaker Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Minority Leader Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Who's going to determine the size of this committee?
So the Senate President and I will determine the size, but the size is going to be fairly large. We talked a little bit about it this morning. It hasn't been decided. It's probably going to be around 21 people. So my thought was our budget chairs, of course, our appropriations chair. I believe on our side it'll be 4 minority members. On the Senate side, it'll probably be every single member of the Ways and Means, because their committee is certainly a lot smaller than ours. So if the figures are right, it's going to be right around 21. Yep. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Ayes have it, motion passes. The fourth item of business is the consideration and approval of session document packets, service pricing for the 2025 legislative session. Chair recognizes Tom Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the annual report of the 2024 document service packets that we put out through the document room. These are the bill packets that people pick up every day from the document room. For the 2024 session, we had 41 packets that were distributed. On the back side of my memo, you will see the breakdown of the ones that are free, the ones that are paid for, and the additional packets that are picked up by the state agencies. For 2025, we are recommending that the pricing does not change for the document packets, the bill packets that are picked up by the state agencies, also giving the state agencies the one free packet if they so desire. And like I said, we recommend no changing in the packet pricing or the free distribution levels. Just one other side comment, just for a little historical perspective. Since 2015, in 2015, we put out 98 bill packets. In 2024, we put out 41. And since 2015, that number has gone down to the level of 41 packets every year. I'm almost looking at possibly going under 40 for the first time in 2025. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I just recommend the same bill packet pricing.
Awesome. Any questions? Is there a motion? Moved by Senate President Masterson, second.
Second.
Second by Minority Leader Sykes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? The ayes have it, motion passes. Fifth item of business is consideration and authorization for an extension of the CanFocus subscription and issuance of an RFP for a 50-state bill tracking service. To discuss this, Chair recognizes Tom Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CanFocus, our 2-year subscription for CanFocus expired on June 30th of this year. That was, like I said, that was a 2-year subscription rate. For the last 18 years, we have gone with either an annual or a 2-year subscription rate over those 18 years. And this is to authorize continuation of a subscription. And also, I was asked to put together a request for proposals for a legislative bill tracking service. And this also includes that. In your packets is a draft of the request for proposals. It is 24 pages long. Most of the language that is in the request for proposal is legalese that's required and/or necessary for a request for proposal. The pertinent parts of the request for proposal are found on pages 19 and 20, which is the specifications and necessary items for the request. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for questions.
Okay, we'll take just a few minutes to look over 19 and 20. Okay, anybody have any questions for Tom? Senate President Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, because it's the first time I've seen when I saw this agenda, the 50 state bill tracking service. What are we getting at there on the 50 state?
There are many, many tracking systems out there on the market today that track all 50 states and not just us. Literally by having a 50 state bill tracking system, you can put in key search words and go out and see what any state's doing at any given time on a bill that you may be looking at. That's just a part of the research.
So would that be a requirement of the RFP? So for example, if our current provider, CanFocus, didn't do 50 state tracking, would they not qualify to submit an RFP?
I think if they wanted to do a 50 state tracking, they can. There's a system out there that they can hook up to, and they can provide that. There's a lot of people that like to see 50 state, so that was put as part of the RFP.
Of course, I'm going off my own experience. I don't, normally if I want something in the other states, I ask research to do it for us, but, okay, I'm trying to decide if is that an add-on, to have this 50 state options an add-on, or you wouldn't qualify unless you had a 50 state option?
Well, the way it was written was 50 state, yeah, as a part of that. I understand it's just a matter of hooking up to a link. Tom? Isn't it just a matter, there's a link out there, there's some type of an interface that they can hook into a service and they can get that information?
My understanding, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, is that you link through API addresses into the other states, similar to what actually CanFocus does that through our system. It has an API link. But I can't answer all 50 states, but I'm assuming that's how they link into each legislature.
Mr. Speaker, if I may.
Yes, Senate, Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things is also, it was mentioned about research going and finding this information. That's the reason why in this RFP, you'll see 400 accounts listed. It's because our research and revisers would have access to this database as well. And it's, I think, an effort, or at least should be an effort on our part, because it was said that research and revisers currently use CanFocus. And so I think we should give them as many tools as possible in order to make their jobs as easy as possible. And if a search function of the 50 states out there It would just, I think, make their jobs a whole lot easier if it's already built into the system that they're currently using. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Leader Sykes.
Thank you. Yeah, my question, so and we don't know what CanFocus or someone else can do, but I mean, this is a Kansas-focused group. So I think in addition, having other 50 states, but like I get my stuff from CSG and NCSL and research. So I'm not opposed to that, but I do have concern that we say they have to have access to all 50 states without, I mean, I think that's part of the RFP process and, looking and evaluating and seeing. But again, I do feel we have access. I know my staff works really well with CanFocus, and I knew this was on the agenda, and I was having some meetings in my district this morning and happened to see several government affairs people from different agencies. So I was asking them what programs they use. Some of them use all 50 states, but they were talking about CanFocus. They really like that for Kansas specifically because it's up to date as amendments are being included and addressed. Like they can follow it there, where some of those other options, they don't have access to that kind of in the moment.
Further discussion? President Masterson.
I hope if you're amenable as a speaker that since we have an LCC subcommittee for administration and this is a draft, and I just like to understand it more myself, and I'd like to make a motion for the extension so we don't have any type of service interruption, and then the RFP, approving the RFP subject to with approval of the LCC Committee on Administration, so have a little more time to review.
So you would like to divide the question basically in?
Or make a single motion that has both those in it, so they're both approved at the same time.
Okay. Hold on just a second. Let's let Senator Rick Wilburn has a question, and then we'll come back. Senator Wilburn? Senator Alley, sorry about that. Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I'm hearing is that we need to make sure that we have a system for next year. And I'm getting some feedback. But if we extend it just for 6 months, that just takes us to the first of the session. I'd like to do that until at least 1 year for the extension, as they are contracted today.
So the problem with that is they would have to agree to that, and I don't know that they're going to agree to a 1-year contract, although I believe they're here. But that's asking them to continue providing their services for certainly longer than what they're asking for, and they are asking for an increase in their rates, and they've also increased their services, I believe, from what I can see. So you're asking them to do the same thing for a lot longer time. And that's the reason why I'd ask for a 4-month extension, which they agreed to at the same rate. I'm not sure that they're willing to go a year at that same rate. Would you like to address? Yeah. You have to push the button. There you go. And your name?
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that. It is a bit of a difficult position. You're correct. We did ask for an increase from 2 years ago. If anyone does not have that proposal, I have it and can give it to you. However, if that is not where this committee wants to go, we would be prepared to accept the 1-year rate from our previous, this is going to get confusing. We always give you a 1-year or a 2-year option. The 2-year option is less per year. If you, I think perhaps a good compromise would be that we would accept a 1-year extension of the contract that expired June 30th at that 1-year rate. Is that Is that clear, or do you need something else
Yes,
from me?
no, absolutely.
I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Very clear. It's, I appreciate you being here. Actually, it was very handy having you here so we could clarify that. So Senator Alley, basically, in case you didn't hear it all, they are amenable to accepting a one-year extension at the one-year rate, which is a little bit more expensive, not that much, a little bit more expensive than our two-year contract that we've had. Senator Masterson.
So if you're ready, Mr. Speaker, I think from what I'm hearing, the motion I will make is I'd move to extend the current CanFocus subscription for 1 year at the one-year rate of the prior contract from July 1, 2024, and authorize Tom Day to issue an RFP approved by the LCC Subcommittee on Administration for Legislative Bill Tracking Services as described.
So you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Senate Minority Leader Sykes.
I would love to
Discussion.
discuss. Yep.
Hold on, discussion. Who was it that called? Croft?
Croft and Carpenter.
Okay, first we'll hear from Majority Leader Croft online. Majority Leader Croft, we can't hear anything you're saying. Well, we'll go to Speaker Pro Tem Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How much is the cost over the next, well, it was extended to 1 year. Do we know what the cost is for the 1 year extension?
Hold on just a second. We'll ask the expert. And he doesn't have that in front of him, so he's probably going to be close, but may not be exact. So
Approximate is fine. Thank you.
Right. So and I apologize. I don't have the document from 2 years ago. It was my recollection, and now I'm looking at Tom to try to put him on the spot as well. My recollection is it was 108 something, but I don't remember the exact figure.
I think you're really, really close. I think it was right around that. I couldn't have told you that until you said it, but I think I read that.
Oh, then does 128 sound more familiar?
Speaker Pro Tem, you have any further questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, discussion and questions. So, how much, I guess if we end up coming out with and approving an RFP here in the coming months or two, then at that point we'll be, since we're potentially extending this for a year, we're going to be paying for two services potentially if the LCC decides to choose another company. How, I guess I would want to know how we would proceed forward with that, and what, I don't think it'd be the best use of taxpayer funds to be paying for two services duplicatively. I've horribly said that. Anyway, and I guess my next question is, what's the makeup of the subcommittee that this would be referred to?
So so to your first question, we wouldn't have two. If there was a change to be made, it would have an implementation period to coincide with the ending of the CanCare contract. And if we didn't, I like the CanCare contract. That's pretty good. CanFocus. Sorry about that Freudian slip. I do like that slip. CanFocus contract. So you're not going to have two. It would just, and it does take a while to integrate a brand new system. So probably a year may be a really good time frame. So I don't have a problem with that. And as far as the subcommittee of administration is what it would go to.
Who makes up the subcommittee of administration?
The chairman, vice chair, and ranking minority.
Ranking minority of?
That's ranking. The ranking member is Senate Minority Leader Sykes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to have to say I appreciate the work of the senators, but I am going to have to oppose not only the extension to 1 year. I think that a software company does have the ability to implement and have the software up and running before the 2025 session. I think that we are needlessly binding our hands at this point. And I think that we can and should look at what alternatives are out there to get ourselves and our members the best product available. But I also want to say that I am opposing sending it to a subcommittee. And the reason is because I think that both the House and the Senate should have an equal voice in this matter. And unfortunately, the subcommittee is made up of 2 senators and there's 1 House member. And so I think that I would prefer to come back for another LCC meeting to have additional discussions regarding the RFP process and what that might look like and compromise between the House and the Senate here in the next week or two. But yeah, no, I really appreciate everybody's input on this. I just think that at this point in time, we need to, I think, do a little bit more digging as LCC as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader Croft. Majority Leader Croft. Okay, we'll move on to Majority Leader Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree that we need this contract now for Can Focus so that we can do what we have done in the past last year, do the same thing for next year, and then put the RFP out for probably the year 2026. If we do away with Can Focus today, we are going to be, what are we going to be using on January 1st? That's my concern. I think that's a concern of my staff, and also of the research have a concern by doing.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Minority Leader Sykes.
Just to clarify, I think the Speaker Pro Tem was saying that legislative, our subcommittee was going to pick, which I don't think was the motion that's on the table. It was saying that subcommittee would look at the language of the draft RFP, but that would still go out. So we could have a more broader RFP to get more submissions, but this group would still be looking at all of those.
That is correct. It's the RFP draft.
Okay.
It's not the evaluation of the incoming RFP or the responses.
So with that being said, I would feel comfortable with this because I would hope that Can Focus would put up their best effort and someone else with 50 states would also, and then this group could look at all of those and make that decision moving forward. But we would have something in place for the coming legislation.
All right, Speaker Pro Tem Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I'm asking for is a place at the table to have this conversation. I'm very passionate about this issue. I want to make sure that we get the right product. I want to make sure that the RFP is not, I'm not saying or accusing anybody of either chamber of doing this, but I want to make sure that it is written in a way that does not benefit one party specifically by, let's say that this company has to be solely based in Kansas or something to that effect. I want to make sure that this RFP, and I'm not accusing anybody, but I'm wanting to make sure that we have the RFP process. It's a legitimate process, and that as many people are able to participate as possible, including the folks over at Can Focus. And so I just want a seat at the table to have that discussion with the rest of the LCC. And so that's the reason why I'm opposing this motion, is because I'm wanting to continue to have this conversation with our colleagues across the chamber, in the other chamber.
So I think if I know, and I'm not trying to put any words in Senate President's mouth, but what he's wanting to do is to make sure, I don't think he cares that there's a 50 state. He doesn't want to limit it so that if you don't have the ability to do 50 state, that you can't come in with an RFP and be successful. I believe that's what he's saying. Not saying that we can't go out and ask for as alternatives, maybe, I don't know what in a contract language you call it, but alternative other add-on services that can be available. So I think this is really just a way for us to maybe widen this just a little bit, but still be able to see everything that's out there, and then bring it back to the LCC body as a whole for approval after we've done that. So, Senate President.
Thank you. And in normal stride, the speaker's spot on with what I was trying to communicate. And when I hear the comments from the pro tem, I don't disagree with him. I want the broadest berth possible and make sure that it's not limiting to a point that it's cutting people out. And I trust the speaker is the voice also for the pro tem in that process. And I'm assuming the pro tem would have accepted the draft as it is. So we're just looking this draft over to make sure it's got the broadest berth.
If I may, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Absolutely. Then I agree. Then I have no problem with the subcommittee then at that point. If you guys are going to widen the language, make it as broad as possible, that's perfectly okay with me. I just don't want it to get restricted down from where it currently exists today. But that being said, I will request to divide the motion because I do not believe that we should be extending CAN focus for an entire year.
Okay, so you are making a motion to divide the question?
I am making a motion to divide and making it to where it's two separate questions. The first one being the subcommittee reviewing the RFP to let, and then the other one is how long the CAN focus renewal will take place.
So that is a substitute motion. Is there a second? Dividing the question? It doesn't require. Okay, so we'll divide the question. The first question will be, just looking to see, yes. Yeah.
Real quick question, since I've actually never been in an LCC meeting that subdivided the
divided,
question.
yeah.
Are we under Robert's rules? Is that a question for Gordon? Is that the proper motion? Is it correct that it is not a substitute motion with the separated motions and that he could unilaterally can divide the question? I'm just curious since I haven't done it before.
The Gordon Self-Revisor statutes, the chair would make the determination on the question, and he has done so.
Okay. So we will go on ahead and divide the question, and then we'll move on with this. So the first question is the extension of 1 year for the CAN focus contract, an extension of 1 year for the contract. All those in favor of extending the contract for 1 year, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
Aye.
No.
So the motion does pass. The contract for with CAN Focus will be extended for 1 year. Second question is that the subcommittee for administration will look at the RFP and make sure that it's broad and in the manner that that we think it's that the folks desire, and then we will bring it back to the committee for final approval. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. So both of those motions pass. Okay, the next order of business is consideration of notice of intention to dispose of a school building in USD 259. To discuss this provision, Chair recognizes Gordon Self.
Ms. Gordon Self-Revisor statutes, there's a memo in your packet. The KSA 72-1439 was enacted in 2023, and it provides that within 30 days of a Board of Education of a school district, when they adopt a resolution to dispose of a building, they're required to submit written notice of their intention to dispose of the building to the legislature. Once that's received under that statute, then the legislature has a time period upon which they can move to state that the legislature has intention for the state to purchase that building. this year in 2024, there was an amendment to that statute that was adopted that would establish a procedure for the LCC when the legislature is not in session to review the disposal of the school building, by the USD and determine if the LCC would deny the legislative option for the state to acquire the building. That would allow the USD to proceed and dispose of the building prior to the next legislative session. On July 2nd of 2024, the chief clerk and the secretary of the Senate did receive notice and a copy of the appropriate resolution from USD 259 of the intent to dispose of Park Elementary School, and thus the LCC has 45 days in which to act to deny that legislative option so that for the state to acquire the building and allow the Wichita School District to dispose of the building. Also in your packet is the letter, the notice, and additionally the resolution adopted by the Board of Education. I will tell you, without going into a lot of detail, that there are requirements in the statute to which the school district must adhere, and my staff has reviewed those requirements, and that the notice was timely made, and that the notice contained all of the requirements in the statute, which would make it appropriate for you to consider. You don't have to act, but if you do act to deny the legislative option, then Wichita School District could proceed. If you don't act, then it would sit till the session, and then the full legislature would have an opportunity to act on it. But the building could not be disposed of until then.
Any questions? Senate President Masterson?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion for discussion. So pursuant to KSA 72-1439B2, I move to deny the legislative option for the state to acquire the Wichita Unified School District number 259 building, commonly known as Park Elementary School, located at 1025 North Main Street in Wichita, Kansas.
Is there a second? Seconded by Minority Leader Miller. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion passes. Wow, that is all of the items. So we are hereby adjourned.